Well, here we are again. It is me, the Swiftologist. I am back in the Department of Swiftology, because today we are doing very high level Swiftology. Today we are going to be deciding what the greatest Taylor Swift song is, the objective Taylor Swift song from each of her 11 studio albums. If you're new here, my name is Zach. I'm the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. You guys need to know that Evolution of a Snake, my podcast, the Taylor Swift podcast, is going on tour in the United States. And we're sold out in LA. We're almost sold out in DC, Boston, and New York. You have low ticket warnings. Atlanta, Nashville, San Francisco, Seattle, Madison, Chicago. We want to see you. So get up on your good foot and go and get tickets. Evolutionofsnake.com, of course. So in my last video, which if you haven't seen, you should go and see. It's an LOML lyrical analysis. I mentioned that there was a best song from every Taylor Swift album and proceeded to rattle them off very quickly without expanding. Someone left a comment and said it would make a good video. So here I am making that video. Today, we are going to ascertain what is the objectively best song from each and every Taylor Swift album. I wrote this entire thing out. I scripted this entire thing. It was 9,000 words. So strap in, buckle up, because we're working today. This is, of course, only my opinion and my objective analysis insofar as anyone can be objective about art, which is inherently subjective. You may differ, and that is totally okay. But in my world and in my universe, these are the songs that describe Taylor Swift's purpose best as an artist. And in case you missed the last video, let me give you a brief overview of what I think the Taylor Swift project is. Her mission as an artist is to remember, to catalog the things that slip away from us with time. The point of writing down her heartbreaks is to crystallize a feeling in that moment of time, to lay it down carefully like a petal embedded in resin, to be perfectly preserved exactly as it was, unalterable. I'm going to let you know right now that there are a few troll images in this slideshow that I've created for you, so enjoy that. But I argue that Taylor Swift is the human ambassador for heartbreak. She chronicles her experiences as the heartbroken person, the person doing the heartbreak, but she also catalogs how heartbreak transforms her and manifests itself in a human life. It's devastating. It disturbs your sense of self. It disrupts your perception of time, but it's also a process, and there's a way to have a broken heart, and Taylor Swift has tried all of them. In fact, she's constantly experiencing a new one and letting us know about it. Love is, of course, her muse. To be in love is a faded chemical thing. There is little rhyme or reason to be made from it, and that's why she puts the petals in resin and preserves them forever. Maybe the twists and turns of fate and love that she can never understand as they are happening to her will someday make sense over time as she looks back on them. Maybe she'll see it from a different angle in the future and understand it completely differently. So now let's talk about how this relates to her songs. Her best songs embody this ethos in a very clear and direct way. Ideally, that best song enhances her experience and her understanding of love and heartbreak, or it introduces a new feeling into the canon that we haven't fully experienced yet. This is, for example, why Lover, the title track, would be a poor contender for a best Taylor Swift song. Yes, it's the title track of that record. Yes, it's the theme of the record as well, but the writing itself is rather syrupy and boilerplate. It's a satisfactory love song. Many people have strong personal attachments to it, but it's a touch too generic to be a truly era-defining tune. Before we get any further into it, I want to say a big thank you to Riverside for sponsoring this video. Divas, you already know that I am working on becoming the multi-platformologist, Swiftologist in your area, on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on YouTube Shorts. It's really exciting being able to kind of learn all these different platforms, but keeping my content consistent in audiovisual quality and with all of my trimmings, the things that make a Swiftologist video. A Swiftologist video can feel like a full-time job in and of itself, and that's why I have to say thank you so much to the sponsor of this video, a returning sponsor. It is Riverside, and of course, I'm here to tell you about how it is my favorite all-in-one platform that makes recording, editing, and repurposing content so much easier. One of my favorite features on Riverside is the magic clips. With a single upload, it finds the most attention-grabbing moments from any of my long-form videos. I do this for the podcast all the time. I also do it with any content that I record exclusively on my phone that is specifically for TikTok. I use it for my longer YouTube videos. With a single upload, it finds the most attention-grabbing moments from my videos and makes them TikTok, Instagram Reel, or YouTube Short friendly. But the thing I really love about the magic clips in Riverside's editing suite is that the brand kits let me customize everything from logos and colors to captions and intros. It ensures there's a cohesive visual message and identity that conjures the Swiftologist vibe across all platforms. There is no more starting from scratch for every single piece of content. I can literally plug it all into one place. For example, when I create an Instagram Reel of Evolution of a Snake, I can instantly apply the podcast logo at the end with a little snake hissing sound, branded captions, and even intros to every clip with just one click. It is a huge time saver, and it makes my content look so polished and on brand every single time it's reappearing in a different form on a different platform. So whether you're building a personal brand or you're running a podcast, podcast or you're growing your business, Riverside tools like Magic Clips and the Brand Kit can really help you save time and stay consistent across all platforms with very little hassle. Try Riverside with my link and use the code SWIFTOLOGIST for 15% off paid plan. Trust me, this is a game changer. Thank you again so much to Riverside for sponsoring this video. You may be wondering, okay, so what is a best Taylor Swift song? What characteristics does it have? I'm here to let you know. It has to summarize the project in some way. You must be able to point at this song or that song and say, I can explain the entire era to you with all of the lyrics from this song without having to borrow from another text or use another song to explain or round out my argument. It all has to exist in one place. That's how you know it's a real banger. It also must elucidate something about the wider project. How does this song capture the album's new lens on heartbreak or love? If you can't make a good argument for why this song adds something new to the conversation from the albums before it, then it's not worthy of discussion in this category. As always, there are exceptions to this rule. I think that Taylor's legacy as an artist is overall as a wordsmith and a lyricist. So whenever she's at her best, her most clear, her most concise, her most cutting, that is when we're approaching best song ever territory. It doesn't happen often, but there are moments where she approaches the greatness of her greatest love songs that are not on the surface directly about love and heartbreak. But as you will see, The Broken Heart is still the forever muse, even when it's not a romantic one and you don't recognize it at first. One of my hot takes is that it's kind of irrelevant whether the song that represents the album best is the best known, most loved, biggest hit song from each era. This becomes even more relevant as we approach the second half of her catalog. Taylor is notorious for having poor single selections, and the purpose of a single is often to sell albums, not to explain or embody them. So there may be a few instances where the best-selling song and the best quality song happen to overlap. I can actually only think of one circumstance where that's true in this scenario. But being a hit isn't a good enough reason to claim something is the best Taylor Swift album representative, in my opinion. I think there are some obvious choices and also some real head scratchers here. So let's just go album by album, and I'll walk you through my short list to detect this vibe. Here are the questions that I'm going to ask myself as we go through the contenders, the short list for each of these albums. Wow, putting it all in caps lock really drives the point home. Number one, does this song encapsulate the album's themes on its own without relying on other songs? Number two, how does it offer a fresh perspective on love or heartbreak in Taylor's catalog? Number three, is the songwriting clear, concise, and emotionally cutting? Is it Taylor at her best? Number four, does it enhance or redefine the album's overall message in a meaningful way? And number five, would removing this song weaken the album's emotional narrative arc? But of course, we need to start at the beginning, which is a very good place to start. And where are we? We are at the debut shop. What's the story and the theme here? Innocence and young love. That's what this record is all about. An artist meeting her muse for the very first time. This record is seminal because it sets up our narrative journey throughout the following records. Many of the hallmarks of her songwriting, what we come to expect from her work when we get more of it, started right here in this dusty old barn. Love is bright and also a little bit agonizing, but not too bad. It's almost like she's acquainted with a real love before she meets a relative heartbreak on this record. So who are my main contenders here? Well, it's all the singles. Tim McGraw, Teardrops on My Guitar, Our Song, and Picture to Burn. I know that's a lot of contenders, but each of these songs actually, when I was thinking about it, accomplishes something unique that gets replicated in style or tone throughout the discography. So I fear we have to talk about them all. Why don't we start with The Troll? The Troll, Picture to Burn. Now, you may be chortling at home at her selection here, but I'm being dead serious. Picture to Burn introduces what is probably the most enduring heartbreak adjacent theme in Taylor Swift's musical life, which is vengeance. It's always interesting to me when I reflect on the debut era and Fearless, and even up until Speak Now, that Taylor was mostly marketed as this kind of like docile, all-American princess, the good girl thing, when there was always this chaotic and insane energy pulsing through her work. The duality of a Teardrops and Picture to Burn on the same album. Unfortunately, this song fails at a few of the questions that I outlined at the beginning. It does not encapsulate the entirety of the project without the context of the other songs. The songwriting is not as clear and concise as the other examples are here. However, it does satisfy some criteria. If we remove this song, the emotional narrative arc of Debut would be entirely different. I mean, we should have said no, which is a threat, but Picture to Burn is a promise. She's pissed off. Here, having a broken heart has given Taylor Swift the permission to up. This is like her Gone Girl, Amy Dunn, cool girl monologue. I'm a cool girl until I'm ready to send my stockbroker dad out with a baseball bat to up your truck. So in that sense, it does offer a new perspective and it does enhance the overall message, but it's not as well written or well rounded enough to compete with the big hitters. Let's examine Our Song next. She is third runner up for me. I think, what a delightful tune. I think musically, which isn't a category that I have to analyze these songs, but maybe should be, advances her project. We had been needing a pop memento. We had been needing a crossover moment. I think this song is the first overtly pop song on this record and also in her catalog. It's got a beat. Does it encapsulate the album's themes on its own? I'm not entirely sure about that because this song is literally all sunshine and roses when at least 40 to 50% of the record involves some sort of wretched sadness. Like Picture to Burn, it very excellently showcases one facet of what Taylor's talking about on this record. The fresh perspective it offers here is a total and complete love story from start to finish. It's a first date, but it's also an entire narrative. You can like hear the day passing you by as you listen to it. She's excited and she's nervous, riding shotgun with her hair undone in the front seat of his car. And then she's at home in her bed, waiting to go to sleep just so she can wake up and call him, asking God to play the whole thing over again. It's adorable. Would removing this song weaken the album's emotional arc? Well, we do have songs like Stay Beautiful and I'm Only Me When I'm With You, so there are similar emotions, but I think losing the conclusion of our song would really hurt this record, so I'm gonna go with a yes on that. The songwriting is clear and concise. It's just more limited in its emotional scope and range, so I think it precludes it from really edging into those top two spots. That's not to say that a happy song can't be the emissary of a Taylor Swift record. Oh no, we will revisit that line of thinking on Fearless, but you know what? We had to narrow it down to two depressing girls. These are our top two contenders, and this hurts my feelings to choose between these two objectively beautiful queens of this caliber. It feels wrong, actually. Tim McGraw is objectively the best written song. It was a smart choice to make this the official ambassador for the album as her very first entry into music because it is country songwriting of the highest order. And then we have Teardrops on My Guitar. And I mean, this song, just from its title alone and the conceit that she conjured while writing it, this is an all-time great Taylor Swift song and visual in your mind. When you picture Taylor Swift, specifically this earlier version of her, if you have any attachment to this era from nostalgia at all, you imagine her gripping onto her guitar and bawling her pretty little eyes out. It's also a metaphor for her work. Her pain is her fuel and heartbreak is her muse. She's also tackling one of her favorite subjects on Teardrops on My Guitar, which is the unrequited love, a love that sidelines her, a love that requires her to paint herself into the picture from the outside. It's a devastatingly simple song. So I go home alone as I turn out the light. I'll put his picture down and maybe get some sleep tonight. This can only have been written by a teenage girl, and that is what makes it so wonderful. What both of these songs share is a longing and a yearning. Tim McGraw is far more restrained and poetic. The hurt of a heartbreak is kind of in the rearview mirror here, and I gather that she wrote this song from the perspective of someone who's very interested in love stories, but maybe hasn't necessarily had one yet, whereas Teardrops on My Guitar is written from the perspective of the heartbreak reporter who is dumbstruck by her first assignment. There's an immediacy to Teardrops on My Guitar and an iconicness about the visual that kind of slightly ekes out Tim McGraw here. And by visual, I don't mean like the music video, I mean the visuals that are conjured in the lyrics. So you know what? This is the winning queen. It's Teardrops on My Guitar, and I don't feel bad about it at all. All right, now it's time to do Fearless. What is she about? Fearless expands on the dreamlike vision of love that Taylor sketches on her debut. It romanticizes firsts, her first love, her first heartbreak, her first taste of fame. But beneath a glittering fairy tale, there is a growing sense of disillusionment. Heartbreak stings more here because she's starting to realize that she isn't a princess and love isn't a story, but she's really only just becoming cognizant of that. But that is kind of a secondary take to her overall swooning. She's getting closer to experiencing a real love here. The refreshing and updated take here is that even when you get Drew, the guy who looks at you but doesn't see you, the story doesn't end there. Happily ever after is but a myth. I personally think that Fearless is more rooted in the construction of a fairy tale rather than its dissolution, which comes on Speak Now. So I do lean into more of the positive and the happy and the airy sides of Fearless. I have 3 selections pulled here for this album: You Belong With Me, Love Story, and Fearless. Let's start with the first question. Do these songs capture the album's themes in their own right? Fearless is the mission statement for the whole record. It depicts love as an experience that is exhilarating, hopeful, and something worth risking your heart for. It vividly paints that post-first date feeling and drags you in with a very writerly hook from the very top. There's something about the way the street looks when it's just rained. It's like you entered and stepped into her mind as she was thinking. If you think about it, Fearless is the naive version of Treacherous. It's about laying your cards on the table and hoping that your opponent has an equal hand. Love Story definitely is the iconic moment from Fearless, and also probably Taylor's overall signature song. That makes it very powerful. It also theoretically does something similar to Teardrops on My Guitar. It is a mission statement for her approach to love. If Teardrops was about writing herself into the story, her next hurdle to clear was trying to control the narrative, and literally that's what Love Story is about: changing the doomed fate of Romeo and Juliet in the naive and hopeful way that only someone who has never really had their heart broken thinks they can. And then, of course, we have the iconic You Belong With Me, which picks up on that wistful longing that we heard on both Tim McGraw and Teardrops on My Guitar. Again, a hallmark feeling in her catalog, unrequited love, but here she's frustrated. I can sense her getting upset, wanting to take action rather than just putting his picture down and maybe getting some sleep tonight. She's driving to his house in the middle of the night. She's the one who makes him laugh when she knows he's about to cry. This song is actually very steady. Taylor is pretty sure that her love is the right love that can cure this person's ailments, and he's just not seeing that properly yet, so she's gonna make him. When we look at the songwriting, each of these songs kind of accomplishes something different. Love Story and You Belong With Me are immediate narrative songs. We begin in one place with Taylor and we end somewhere else. She's guiding us through that story. Fearless is more atmospheric. It conjures up a feeling rather than a specific story, even though it is rooted in that first date. The bridge of Fearless is one of the more exciting moments on the record. You can literally hear her gasping with anticipation through it. Do these songs enhance the overall message? Well, it's Fearless. That's the whole point of the album. If we're talking about a song that gets it, it's embracing love without holding back. It's getting literally dragged headfirst, Fearless. If you removed the title track from the album, it would suffer massively. Love Story and You Belong With Me also enhance the overall message of Fearless. She's asserting her agency by telling the story differently on Love Story, and she's using music to air her frustrations for a cathartic moment on You Belong With Me. That's another very central part of a Taylor Swift song, the catharsis and the release element. And you know what? I made a bit of a rogue decision here. I really thought I was going to pick Love Story when I sat down to write this, but I think I'm going to make the rogue decision and go with Fearless because I think it has an element of availability that Love Story doesn't have. Love Story is a tight, clean narrative. It's how she wishes the world would be. You Belong With Me is a frustrated plea, but Fearless is the closest thing to an actual real human emotion. It's a mix of fear and courage, hope and carelessness, and that leads us very well into the theme of the next album. Blurting it out, word vomit, speaking now. Taylor was all talk on Fearless, and by that I mean, by and large, she was communicating how she felt. I'm sick and tired of your attitude. I was there when you said forever and always. I'm driving to your house to let you know that I understand you. Speak now is all of those things that you want to say when you are rendered speechless by the enormity of your feelings. Sometimes that's because someone has made you feel small. Other times it's because you feel ashamed of the way you handled something. But the conceit of the record is that all of these songs are confessions. They are the intrusive thoughts, the things you reserve for your diary suddenly aired out in public. What you wish you had said when you play back the situation in the shower after it's over. And so with that said, I think there are really two incredibly strong options for Speak Now, but they are completely poles apart. It's Enchanted and Dear John. Do you like these pictures I found? I was cry laughing when I was looking for pictures to put in here and I found these. Do these songs encapsulate the album's message on their own? Well, yes, these songs are actually two sides of the same coin, I would say. Enchanted really embodies the fantasy of Speak Now. It is, for lack of a better word, a delusional enterprise. As an entire composition, this song reflects the absurdity of the construct of the album, but also it displays how winning the concept can be. It's an overblown overreaction to meeting someone once and then spending forever wondering if they knew. It's a simple glance across the room that changed your life, if only for one night, just to write this song. Dear John, on the other hand, is the best example of exposing something that you left unsaid. First of all, the title. She finally has a salacious ex to name that people actually care about, familiar to those outside of the Disneyverse, John Mayer, but of course. It's also a wordplay on the Dear John letter trope, which is a term for a breakup note written by a woman to a man. Taylor's kind of flipping it on its head here because it's clear that she wasn't the one who ended it, but there's lots to mine just from the title alone. It's smart. The song is a jarring and sputtering explosion of feeling, a very calculated retelling of a new kind of heartbreak for her, manipulation and deception. Fearless Taylor, the one who was ready to get dragged headfirst fearless, was not looking before she jumped. This is her dispatch from the ground. It's almost like she's in conversation with herself, as she says over and over after describing how he hurt her. You should have known. Shame on me. But also, this is the best example of Taylor Swift winning a war of words, settling a score once and for all with just one song. She literally never needed to address him again after this. When we're asking if these songs enhance the album's overall message, well, yes. It's like the older Taylor meeting the younger Taylor. There's a part of her that will always be the foolish one that was enchanted to meet you, but the 19-year-old girl in the dress will never leave her or be the same ever again either. Now, I forgot to mention off the top that I am not picking my favorite songs. I'm deliberately trying actively not to pick one of my favorite songs. I think only one album actually is my favorite song that has the same selection, and I will explain why. But this is where it kind of fell apart for me with Enchanted. When we're asking if these songs enhance the overall message, would removing this song weaken the album's emotional or narrative arc? And it pains me to say this, but if we remove Enchanted, we still have Mine and Sparks Fly, which do address some of what's being discussed here. There is nothing else like Dear John on this record. So for that reason alone, we have to let Dear John have her moment. She is the best song from Speak Now. Up next, we have my favorite album, and this is not my favorite song on the album, but it is objectively the best song. There's only one answer, and we all know what the hell it is. It's All Too Well. Not the 10-minute version, the 5-minute version. This is Taylor's first messy, chaotic love addiction era. She learns here that heartbreak can be as volatile and exhilarating as falling in love is. She also learns more about her tendencies to self-destruct, to second guess, to walk the same path that leads to the same dead end. This was such a watershed moment for her entire outlook on life and the world, completely prompted by the undoing and redoing and then undoing again of a 3-dimensional love. There just isn't another song in contest for it. And also, just to let you know, the vault tracks are not eligible for best songs from the albums because they came after, so they don't count. 1989. Now, this is an interesting one. I've always felt that 1989 was a bit emotionally neutered. There is something robotic, and I mean that in a complimentary sense, about this record. It really feels more like a philosophical pivot and a rebrand for the public's benefit. If you read between the lines on Red, all the grown-up stuff is in there. She just had to age it up by transitioning fully into pop. But make no mistake, this is still an album about love and heartbreak. She just has a sense of distance and a remove from that heartbreak that she's writing about that renders all of these songs a little bit less urgent and a bit more in hindsight. It allows the production and the vocal delivery for the first time in Taylor's career to really take center stage. And this is a pattern that repeats itself pretty much until Lover is over. Love is not a fairy tale anymore, but it is cinematic, from the movie star theatrics of Wildest Dreams to that James Dean daydream look in your eye. This is a polished, sleek, stylized heartbreak. She has already worked out why it ended. She has no further questions to ask, but she does have some answers to give. And so I think the best song on 1989 slightly deviates from the main purpose we're veering into, which is the best writing territory. So I think Style and Blank Space are the main contenders here. They are two of the finest pop songs in her catalog, and they also employ very Swiftian tactics to make their splash. It also just feels appropriate that the best song from 1989 really reflects what that album does best, which is create bulletproof pop songs. Blank Space definitely encapsulates the overarching theme of the album. 1989 is very much a commentary on what other people think of her as much as what she thinks of heartbreak. She's playing into other people's perceptions here, drawing out a fictional character and becoming her. It's kind of like Love Story if you think about it just from the way that it's written. Style, on the other hand, delivers a knowing wink, but in a completely different way. She's doing her Dear John T. Again, we all know who this song is about, and she made a song so damn good that it actually eclipsed the subject matter. When the song came out, the conversation was not about, oh my God, it's about Harry Styles. The conversation was about, why is this one of the greatest pop songs ever made coming from Taylor Swift? Style is about knowing what happens when you play the game of love and lose, but not caring and doing it anyway. It's very representative of the push-pull relationship she's talking about, will they, won't they vibe that is happening all over this record. Style offers a fresh perspective on heartbreak because our narrator is very detached from the situation she's talking about. On Red, she was frustrated, enraged even by the getting back together, the ping-ponging, the yo-yoing of it all. On Style, she's not powerless to the gravitational pull of someone she shouldn't be with, like she was on Treacherous, the album before. She's a knowing, willing participant in the feeling of doing something that you shouldn't be doing, which makes it kind of scary and risky and sexy and dangerous. Blank Space is Taylor breaking the fourth wall for the very first time, displaying her awareness of what other people have to say about her role as the heartbreak reporter in our world. And here she's trying to tell you that it isn't true. She's re-weaponizing something essential about her that was first weaponized against her. It's very smart. It's working on multiple levels here. When it comes to the songwriting, Style is a good example of the clipped approach to lyricism that she had on 1989. She's painting in broad strokes here. The diaristic specificities are a long way away. Blank Space is extremely direct and clear, containing numerous zingers that still get parroted off with glee at the ears toward to this day. It's exaggerated and it's dramatic, but it's also funny and smart and self-aware. She hadn't shown before this record that she could have a sense of humor about herself and her role in life in the public eye, and that I think is a very seismic development in her catalog, so Blank Space is a good representative of that. And Hateration wins. When we look at can the album survive without these songs, it pains me to say it because I personally prefer it, and Style is a perfect pop song, but no one in this world could have survived without Blank Space, and the record would feel much more distant and impersonal without it. So there you have it. All right, now we're in the Reputation era. This might be the hardest one to choose because stylistically, it's so different from anything that she's ever done. What's it about? Well, it's about love under scrutiny, trying to keep something new and precious alive in the harshest conditions. We also have love as the refuge rather than the antagonist here, which is interesting. It is, after all, a bait and switch album dressed up as revenge. It is really about the power of love to heal and save. I'm going to argue for the two ambassadors of those two things here. Look What You Made Me Do and Delicate as the best songs from Reputation. Trust and Believe the Getaway Car crossed my mind. It talks about love as an escape for sure, but it doesn't really contain a heartbreak or a love story. It's more about getting the hell out of the burning house. It's really the precursor to Reputation, which is why when I redid my track list and reshuffled it into a chronological order, I had Getaway Car come first before the rest of the record. Do these songs encapsulate the album's themes on their own? Look What You Made Me Do definitely captures the phoenix rising from from the ashes of getting canceled, which is a very sore heartbreak for Taylor and a new thing she's experiencing here. This song is Taylor metaphorically scorching the earth to start over. It's an armor that she built that she still wears to this day from time to time. Delicate doesn't really address that fire so much, but it does address how the real Taylor is coping with these seismic changes in her life. She's channeling the rejection that she's felt from the public into a new relationship that just hasn't been stress tested against these measures yet. She wonders if the enormity of her persona can ever really be conquered by love, and the song sonically reflects that kind of hesitance and the frantic repeat of the hook. So they each in their own way do. How do they offer a different perspective on heartbreak? Well, Look What You Made Me Do is about power, not sadness in the face of a heartbreak. Betrayal here is the fuel for her getaway car to start over rather than the head-on collision that chucks her off course. Delicate is a love song without confidence. She's not happy and enthralled like she is on Fearless, for example. She's not wary but hopeful like she was on Treacherous. She's uncertain and scared, and her faith in the power of love has been knocked, but still, it endures. When we talk about songwriting, the Look What You Made Me Do songwriting was designed to gag and to shock. It's a bit of a stunt. It's not poetic. It's not confessional. It's a mood. It's a vibe. Delicate is the most Taylor Swift song on this record, where she is the least Taylor Swift she's ever been because she's building this armor around herself. Even the other songs like New Year's Day feel a bit distant. Delicate is the most raw and direct. My reputation's never been worse, so you must like me for me. So in my opinion, Delicate wins in this category. Do these songs enhance the overall message of the album, and would removing them weaken the album's impact? Look What You Made Me Do is the blueprint for Reputation. I cannot imagine the record without it. Delicate, however, is pretty much the sole emotional stakes on the record. If we didn't have it, I fear that Reputation would lack a very critical depth that we had been needing from her at this specific moment in time. She's telling us that the old Taylor is dead, but she doesn't really mean that, and we don't really want to hear it. And Delicate lets us know that she's still in there. For the gag and the impact, it would have to be Look What You Made Me Do, but since we're looking at the overall best song and how it contributes to Taylor's wider project, Delicate is a one-of-a-kind song about love after a new kind of heartbreak, getting canceled, so it wins. Here she comes again, my wife. Lover is, now, you would think that this record offers us a glimpse at something new from Taylor, given that she's found the love of her life. But this is a quotidian record from a lyrical perspective, and not in a particularly charming way. The overt love songs like Lover and Paper Rings and I Think He Knows, which is the best song ever created, by the way, don't really add anything to our understanding of her role as the heartbreak reporter, nor do they enter areas she hasn't covered while writing about being in love before. All of the sappy songs on Lover stole the Everything Has Changed nachos lyrically, like there just isn't much progression here. That's not to say that it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not iterative in the way that her best records are. Even my favorite song, Death by a Thousand Cuts, doesn't add anything new to our understanding of her heartbreak either. Conceptually maybe, but lyrically and in the song it doesn't. I've said it a million times, but Daylight is literally ChatGPT Taylor Swift song from a lyrical perspective. Absolutely zero insight, though it will try and trick you otherwise. I've explained this elsewhere, so go look for that. But overall, I would say that the unique take that Lover has on love and heartbreak is that she's got everything she wanted. It's just not what she imagined. Olivia Rodrigo tease. The dramatic part, the turmoil is allegedly over, so what is the next step? This is like that middle part between committing to someone for the first time and taking the next step to committing to them forever. The closest we get to an interesting take on being in love is Cornelia Street and, yes, Cruel Summer. Yes, the hell I said it. Cruel Summer, best written song ever of all time. We've been new, but let's throw these queens through their paces and see who comes out on top. How do these songs capture the album's themes on their own? Well, Lover is about all kinds of love. It is an expansive album. Some might call that a weak concept for an album, and that's why almost anything can fit into it. But Cruel Summer is about the reckless, desperate side of a romance that makes it completely unforgettable. This song really reminds me of a more active version of The Way I Loved You, or if this was a movie, thematically. Cornelia Street really embodies the idea of love being your home. We hear her reference so many different places on this album. Nashville, Louis V up on Bond Street. She's in London. She's in the West Village. But this song is really about finding her sense of place and familiarity in her love with someone else. And that love is so powerful, it can destroy a physical home if it were to leave her. There's a lot of fear on this song, the fear of losing love, and that is very clear. So how do these songs offer a fresh view of heartbreak for Taylor? Well, Cruel Summer lives in the gray area between love and fatal attraction. It is chaotic and intoxicating, an addiction almost. There is an urgency of feeling here that is absent in her other songs about anticipation. There is an adrenaline rush here, and frankly, it is quite sexual. And that is, not the most prominent feature on a Taylor Swift record. Cornelia Street is about the anxiety of losing something she already has, of acknowledging what a hard-won love has done for her in a positive sense, and the potential repercussions of losing it. But let's talk about the songwriting. The easiest thing to say about any slow song is that it's well written. Any wordy ballad by Taylor Swift is propped up by Swifties as the most deep and meaningful thing she's ever created. And there's actually been a huge turn towards snobbery for popular songs like Cruel Summer from Swifties, the young and uninitiated, of course. Let me get you together for a moment. First of all, Taylor Swift, most popular artist in the world. So you're not spinning an indie record when you turn up a snooze fest like Coney Island and say that it's better than Love Story, okay? You're not doing something. It's still a pop song. Second of all, when was a hit a bad thing? Taylor is a pop star. It's not underground indie artist Taylor Swift performing in basements to two people. It's Taylor Swift causing earthquake in Seattle because almost 100,000 people jumped up and down at the same time. What are you not getting about that? The magic of a hit is that it captures people all around the world and unites them in one moment or one feeling. Sometimes, yes, that can be a bit asinine. Happy by Pharrell Williams is not well written, but it does capture a vibe of being happy. The reason why Taylor's pop hits are so impressive is because more often than not, they contain lyricism that is not found in hits of this size, impact, and reach. So really, we should be talking more about how difficult it is to write a smart pop song that introduces a new feeling. Because the new Swifties are the ones spewing this nonsense, that it's basic to say Cruel Summer is a good song or to rank it highly, let me remind you, while you were eating applesauce, the real Swifties who suffered through the actual rollout and had to watch Taylor pedal and promote Me and You Need to Calm Down, the worst songs ever created, while this absolute diva rotted away in silence on the tracklist, locked in her cage, we had to sit with the knowledge that it was the best song ever created that nobody knew for 4 years, until it actually became a hit. And then I would say it became the most organic hit of her entire career. Why? Because of the enormity of feeling on this song. And if you actually read the lyrics, it's some of the most abstract and poetic lyricism she has ever penned. The second verse is some of the most evocative and intoxicating writing she's ever done. Hang your head low in the glow of the vending machine. I'm not dying. Cut the headlights. Summer's a knife. I'm always waiting for you just to cut to the bone. If I bleed, you'll be the last to know. Are you hearing this? This is like the perfect description of how it feels to be falling in love with someone while dating them casually. That absolutely electric chemistry between the two of you that is pulling you together over and over again, despite it being a bad idea. The element of secrecy. I snuck in through the garden gate every night that summer just to seal my fate. Oh, girls. It's in different areas. Some of you don't get it. Many don't, but I do. I'm so serious when I say this is some of the best writing she's ever done, purely because there's nothing like this song in her catalog. She has not replicated it since. Cornelia Street is purely interesting by subject matter alone. It definitely has some pretty lines. She was definitely cooking again in the second verse here. Windows flung right open, autumn air, jacket around my shoulders is yours. We bless the rains on Cornelia Street. We memorize the creaks in the floor. This album was so overproduced and overwrought, and I think she knew that she didn't have a real tearjerker on the record, aside from Soon You'll Get Better, which is an astonishingly beautiful song, by the way. There's an argument to be made for that being the best song on Lover, but I don't have time to get into that today. The production definitely dilutes Cornelia Street's impact a little bit. I prefer the acoustic version, and while these lines are pretty and visually appealing, they don't contain the jaw-dropping lines we've come to know from her best slow songs. There's no Call Me Up Again just to break me like a promise here. Let this be my lesson to all the young Swifties that slow doesn't always mean good or deep. Real depth can be transmitted in any medium, and it's often much harder to convey depth in a full-on pop song than it is with a guitar and a piano. Sitting there and playing the piano alone is a moment that affords you seriousness. You're kind of built in to take it seriously. The skill of a great smart pop song is that it sneaks a real revelation into a song without you realizing that it's happening through the garden gate, some might say. So do these songs enhance the album's overall message? Well, Cruel Summer saved the fucking album. Let's just be honest about it. It is the best song on the record by a country mile. It adds a level of depth and a layer of complexity to what is otherwise quite a superficial boilerplate album. Without it, it's a snooze fest featuring Death by a Thousand Cuts and some fun pop songs like I Think He Knows and London Boy. Cornelia Street, again, adds a level of understanding about Joe and Taylor's specific and unique dynamic. But does it add anything new to the conversation about Taylor's approach to love or heartbreak? I'm saying not really. And you know why? Because this exact fear, this anxiety, is expressed in a better and more interesting way on Delicate. Would removing these songs weaken the album's narrative arc? For Cruel Summer, absolutely. For Cornelia Street, I don't think so. The Archer also addresses what she does here. However, nothing on this record can do No Rules in Breakable Heaven, and so that's on period. Cruel Summer clears. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Folklore. Taylor is looking at love through a different lens on this album. She is mediating her own feelings through imagined stories. She's using her writerly instincts and opening her eyes just a little bit wider, taking in more context around her to bring it to the page. It's not just about her, but it definitely still is about her. And this is an album of the subconscious. We know now, especially, that she was communicating feelings that she hadn't even become fully cognizant of herself. For this reason, the 3 love triangle songs are out of consideration: Betty, Cardigan, and August. They are quite pointedly about something fictional. There There are elements of Cardigan that we can now retroactively apply to Maddie Healy, but they're not that interesting or memorable. Sorry, Diva, even though they may be some of the most popular songs on the record. You see how that works? The lesson she learned about love and heartbreak while writing this was that sometimes those two things can exist entirely in your mind. You can break your own heart. You can be living with a broken heart and you may not even know it. If you're purely picking the best song on this album based on the fact that it is a hybrid of fictional and diaristic writing, the obvious choice is The Last Great American Dynasty. That is a deftly written and constructed song, beginning with a long country-esque deep dive into someone else, then connecting that whole story to Taylor's life and turning it around towards the end. Brava. But I think the most quintessentially folklorian thing about this record in the context of her wider project and catalog is how the subconscious can feel things you aren't aware of and how those things can bleed out into many different areas of your life, most prominently through a broken heart. Songs like Hoax and Peace are definitely good contenders for this, but Peace is too specifically about Joe and Hoax is too purposefully vague for them to really be the spokeswomen for this album. So for this reason, I have narrowed Folklore down to 3 selections: Mirror Ball, My Tears, Ricochet, and The One. So do these songs capture the album's theme in their own right? Mirror Ball is really a quintessential song from this period of time and style of writing. Taylor explores the fragility of her identity through the extended metaphor of a lonely mirror ball. It also really kind of captures the time period in which it was created, social disconnection, isolation. The song is the best example of what the pandemic did to many of our brains, but most specifically to Taylor Swift's brain. The whole idea of going inward was the impulse for Folklore, and I often imagine her kind of starting here, even though it wasn't the first song she wrote for the record, when I think of arranging the album as a story. The extended metaphor lets her widen her gaze to look further at different characters and telling different stories on other tracks. The One is the album opener, and it also captures the essence of that time, nostalgia, looking back on the near past with a yearning, but also with the knowledge that what's past is past and can't be undone. It reflects on her favorite topic, a missed connection, unrequited love, with no animating emotion, just that sense of a finger tapping on the desk while someone stares off into the distance and has a moment of wondering. My Tears, Ricochet, woo, this is an emotional gut punch, especially resonant to her long-term fans who understand the concept of this song. She is, again, working in extended metaphor. She's literally passed away. She's perished from the hurt that was inflicted upon her, and she's wondering why the people who inflicted this fatal hurt are pretending they ever cared by attending her wake. They're dancing on her grave, essentially. This is obviously about Scott Borchetta stealing her master recordings from her, and I think she has barely addressed the emotional side of what this betrayal did to her. She so often wants to present herself as the victor, the hero, the person who's unbothered. Karma is my boyfriend. So I think it's very unique and special that she actually lets herself and lets us hear her be vulnerable here. And the metaphor allows her to be more vulnerable than I think she would have liked to be if it was a direct and obvious, my masters were stolen song. When you can't sleep at night, you'll hear my stolen lullabies is a world stop moment. So the writing on this song is truly top notch, some of the best on the record, and it definitely encapsulates the album's specific purpose of finding new ways to write about heartbreak. Speaking of new ways to write about heartbreak, Mirror Ball is very much about love. It's about how much she is able to see and love herself and how that lack of love can relate to other people around her. An identity in flux, a self in crisis. This is the kind of loss of love she hasn't written about before. I think it's also very widely applicable. People resonate with feeling like a mirror ball. The One's fresh perspective is really the tonal shift in how she's remembering an old flame. It's not urgent. It's not deeply upsetting. It's not unrealistic. It's just wondering. It's just a question. Could you have been the one? A very human experience. My Tears, Ricochet talks about the heartbreak of a non-romantic betrayal. That in and of itself is deeply compelling to me. An emotional pain, not love-induced, so unbearable that it killed her. Tell me more. On these songs, is the writing clear, concise, and emotionally cutting? Clear and concise takes on different meanings with Folklore because, again, we are working in a lot of abstractions. Mirror Ball kind of shifts towards confession and directness in the bridge. I've never been a natural. All I do is try. She makes the connection between the metaphor and herself abundantly clear. The One is quite straightforward and direct, actually, but the emotional impact of it is a bit more faint. My Tears, Ricochet is kind of like a Cruel Summer. It has a one-of-a-kind lyricism. It's ornate and grandiose. The imagery is very cinematic, but it's also specific. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me. You clutch my master recordings in your arms as you say, isn't it a shame she's no longer around? It's such a brilliant way to describe her masters being stolen from her. Do these songs enhance the album's overall message? Well, yes, they all do. Mirror Ball, I think, makes the personal through line through all the myth very clear. The One sets the stage for what we'll experience vibe-wise on the entire record, and My Tears, Ricochet encapsulates a new depth of feeling that Taylor has been able to access with a new style of songwriting. Would the album's narrative arc be weakened if we removed any of these things? Well, yes. I have to say, though, of all these three, if Folklore had to live without something and still make sense the way it's supposed to, the one can go. I hate to say it, but it is true. I'm going to go with my final selection of My Tears Ricochet Best Song on Folklore because it is haunting, cinematic, and it blew my mind the first time I heard it and continues to do so to this day. Full lyrical analysis of that is required at some point. Now let's talk about Folklore's freaky deaky sister, Evermore. This one is actually really tricky because Evermore is slippery. It's difficult to pin down, and I think this is because it picks up from where Folklore left off, but it traverses into even stranger corners and off the beaten paths than we had on Folklore. I've always said that for a front to back listen, it's Folklore, but for the individual highlights, Evermore has some real stunners. If I had to pick an overarching theme for Evermore, it would be memory and loss, how dreams can bleed into your real life, the idle mind is the devil's playground. There's so much Maddie Healy foreshadowing here, and a lot of the subconscious is leaping off the page. It's more unwieldy, it's more adventurous. It takes the daring part of Folklore and doubles down on it. It's not as self-conscious, and it also contains more multitudes. There are very many great songs here. The heartbreak of Tolerate It, the real country storytelling on Cowboy Like Me, the Emily Dickinsian vibes of Ivy is a huge bright spot. But when we're talking about the best songs that encapsulate this specific detour in her discography, I think we have to narrow it down to what I think other people will perceive as two very rogue selections. Again, people will always lead into the wordiest or the slowest song as the best one. So I know that Champagne Problems and Tolerate It truthers will be wilding at my selections, but those songs are very much the more abstracted moments on Evermore. To understand her approach to writing this and what it means to the project, I think we have two front runners, Marjorie and Right Where You Left Me. Do these songs capture the album's theme on their own? Well, Evermore is about memory and loss, I think, when we really boil it down to what kind of love and heartbreak we're discussing here. Marjorie is a very touching and deeply personal reflection on the loss of a grandparent. It's such a specific loss, one that's not really been expressed in such a tender and intimate way in song before, to my knowledge. And she conjures that loss so beautifully here, complete with Marjorie's own voice coming in at the end. It is a very experimental song, and it's also very sweet and poignant. Right Where You Left Me could be the mission statement to Taylor Swift's entire career. I couldn't believe that she bonus tracked this. Some part of Taylor will always and forever be still at the restaurant, still sitting in that corner she haunts, counting her scars and cataloging the wrongs that were done onto her, flipping through her own journal, trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. Remember when I said that her love of control in life and her loss of control in love was her ultimate muse? That is rendered perfectly on this song. Heartbreak is so devastating that there are times when she gets physically stuck and haunted forever, unable to move on until she can figure out how it happened. So how do these songs offer fresh takes on love and heartbreak? Like I said, Marjorie describes a very specific kind of heartbreak we don't get to hear about very often. Right Where You Left Me is the permanent heartbroken song. It doesn't end. There is no lesson learned. She does not even get up from the table to start writing this song. It just falls out of her mouth while she reels, shell-shocked by the enormity of this feeling. I can see all the different eras of Taylor sitting around the table in the restaurant, frozen in time somehow at their own unique moments. And this song is deeply connected to the Eras tour as well. I wonder if it sparked any inspiration or thoughts for her on how that tour would be such a faithful reproduction. Is the songwriting clear and concise? Well, yes, especially on Marjorie. It's quite plain and simple. What died didn't stay dead. You're alive in my head. I carry the loss of you with me, and in that way, I make you alive again. Right Where You Left Me is literally arresting from the first line. You hear the panic in her voice when she eventually starts to sing, "Help, I'm still at the restaurant. Hello, I'm still sitting in the corner I haunt. Can someone help me?" It's almost like you can hear her falling down the rabbit hole again, the hole she's fallen down many times, but sees no way out of. She's trapped. Now, how do these songs enhance the record's overall message? Well, again, the record is about memory and loss, and in their own way, each of these songs exemplify the two examples of what can happen when you experience loss. You can accept it and invite it into your life and allow it to grow with you and become something beautiful, like Marjorie, or it can paralyze you and control your psyche forever. That's Right Where You Left Me. Some of us are still here, okay? Some of us are still here. And personally, I think that Right Where You Left Me is more interesting because it's a theme that gets expanded on in subsequent records while also connecting back to stuff she's written before. Marjorie, however beautiful, is an anomaly in her catalog. Removing either of these songs would definitely weaken Evermore's emotional narrative arc, but because this album does go into so many different areas, I think both of these songs situate you in a different experience. Marjorie probably wins the round of this needs to be on the record because there's nothing else like it. But overall, to best represent Evermore for all the reasons I listed, I have to go with my girl, my diva, Right Where You Left Me. Midnights. Now, this is an interesting one too because Midnights itself doesn't really know what it wants to be. It is a beautifully confused effort that keeps unraveling over time. But when you actually dig into it, it really is just about one thing, wanting to move on from wherever the hell you currently are. The conceit she said about Midnights is that it was essentially a collection of reflections about different trying times throughout her life, a very Swiftian concept. Pacing around the room in the middle of the night has led to great songs like All Too Well, Last Kiss, The Archer, Better Man, Nothing New, the list goes on and on. So my instinct while picking an ambassador here is to lean into the revelation or the conclusion part of it all. Midnights has a lot of vagueness and spotty depth, so there aren't that many choices to pull in that respect, but I've got two for argument's sake, even though I think there's a clear winner, You're on Your Own Kid, and Would've, Could've, Should've. So do these songs encapsulate the album's themes on their own? Midnights is about revisiting old wounds, and Would've, Could've, Should've certainly does that in spades. We're talking about a situation realization that at this point is at least 12 years over. It's about the lasting impact of a formative trauma, a ghost that has definitely not stopped haunting her. You're on Your Own Kid has a similar approach, but it takes a broader stroke and a more galvanizing tone. She reflects on her most serious traumas. Hosted parties, starved my body like I'd be saved by a perfect kiss is an insanely astute way to sum up her entire career and personal life in one fell swoop, but it settles on this very resolute self-knowledge that only can come to you with age and life learned. It's about growth and knowing that your past does not have to be your present, even if it is. You got this, queen. So how do these offer different and fresh perspectives on love and heartbreak? Well, woulda, coulda, shoulda shows you that no matter how many scores you settle or incredible songs you write, remember that Dear John was widely considered to be a very successful takedown of John Mayer. There are some gashes that will not close. On the other hand, You're on Your Own Kid talks about loneliness in a really interesting way. It's like no matter how many iterations of herself she has tried on, how many eras she has embodied and shrugged off to remake herself anew, no matter how many best friends ever she's declared to the public or men she thought would save her, the harshest and most freeing realization of everything that she's learned is that she is on her own. She is independent. Even if it hurts, it's true. Is the songwriting clear and emotionally cutting? Woulda, coulda, shoulda is like a punch in the face. Give me back my girlhood. It was mine first is one of the most painful lines that she's ever written. And the way it's sung is a jaw-dropping moment. It's the howl you make in the middle of the night, very fitting to the album's theme. You're on Your Own Kid again paints with a broader stroke, but it lands each and every plane that it launches. The way it all coalesces together at the end as well offers a resolution and a hope that is not insincere or overwrought. She's not saying that your life will be perfect now that you found love that is golden like daylight. She's saying whatever happens, and bad things will keep happening, diva, you have yourself. And you know that you can handle anything, even if it sucks. They each represent midnights in their own way. Again, would have, could have, should have is proof that there are some scars that will not fade. And You're on Your Own Kid is almost like a response to that. It says, yeah, that might hurt forever, but you can and you will face it every day. Would removing each of these songs alter the narrative arc? Well, would have, could have, should have is a bonus track, and the 3am edition does feel rather separate to the standard edition of Midnights in a way that the anthology doesn't feel separate to Torture Poet's Department, if you know what I mean. If you removed You're on Your Own Kid from the standard track list, oh girls, it all falls apart. Then we're just anti-hero bejeweling everywhere, and we can't be doing that 24/7. We can only be doing that 22/7 max on a Taylor Swift album. So I'm going with You're on Your Own Kid. And then of course, as you heard in my last video, if you want a full explanation on why this is the Torture Poet song, it's LOML. You can watch my last one. And that means that the best songs from every Taylor Swift album are in this order: Debut, Teardrops on My Guitar; Fearless, the title track; Speak Now, Dear John; Red, All Too Well; 1989, Blank Space; Reputation; Delicate; Lover; Cruel Summer; Folklore, My Tears Ricochet; Evermore, Right Where You Left Me; Midnights, You're on Your Own Kid; and Torture Poets, LOML. This was a very fun and interesting exercise. Of course, this is dynamic. This is subject to revision and change. You guys know I change my mind all the time. It's fun. So if you really want to make an argument for a song that I dismissed in this video, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think the most essential Taylor Swift song is from every single Taylor Swift album. I would love to hear from you. And also, thank you again so much to Riverside for sponsoring this video. I will see you soon. Goodbye, Swifties.